Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Recruiting analyst Steve Lorenz from 247Sports will join us today with his thoughts on the class of 2023. Before he jumps on, a few of my thoughts to get us started. Baseball, softball, and other spring sports are in full swing right now. Still, most of you want to just hear football news, which is kind of hard to come by right now. One aspect of college football has no off-season: recruiting. Jim Harbaugh and his staff will be busy putting together the class of 2023 right up until December. As of today, we have a top 20 class, which is somewhat underwhelming for many of you. Some of you probably thought that following last year's Big Ten championship and playoff appearance, we would be recruiting at a much higher level. Well, we aren't yet, and I'm sure that concerns a lot of you. My guest today says there are some valid reasons why the class of 2023 is off to a slower than expected start. Joining us next on our Game Day segment is Michigan recruiting analyst Steve Lorenz from 247Sports. So stay with us. Here with us this week to catch up on what's going on in the Michigan recruiting world is Steve Lorenz from 247Sports. Steve, been a while. It's great to have you back with us.
Thanks for having me on, Mike. Appreciate it.
As you know, recruiting always a big thing for your readers, our listeners. A lot of folks are on top of recruiting every day, some not so much. So for the sake of those listeners who have been, sort of paying attention to what Michigan is doing, let's talk about the hard commits that we have in this class of 23, Steve, and get your thoughts on each one of them. Let's start with Raylan Wilson, 6 foot, 205-pound linebacker. He's a 4-star. He's from Tallahassee, Florida.
Great player. Like you said, Tallahassee, Florida. Speed, athleticism, that's where his game is predicated. I want to say he just set a PR in the 100-meter dash. I can't remember what the numbers were, but I remember it being impressed for a kid his size. But yeah, Tallahassee, Florida, top 100 kid, committed, but nobody, all the big schools down south are going to keep going after a guy like him, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's just part of the deal. I mean, it was known when the day he committed that wasn't going to stop, So he's visited Georgia, he's visited Florida since he made his verbal commitment to Michigan. He has not been back up to Ann Arbor yet, but I suspect either sometime later this spring or maybe something like the barbecue in July, I suppose we'll probably see him back. So, a guy that if they can hang on to him is absolutely a cornerstone for the class, right? I mean, he's that good. Like I say, Georgia, Florida were interested, but I mean, he had a bunch of the other big time offers before he committed. And I don't know one of those guys, like I thought when he first committed, like not a guy you'd necessarily normally see Michigan win a recruiting battle for. Tallahassee, Florida, not really a area I feel like Michigan's recruited too heavily. But he came up for the Northwestern game last year, had an amazing visit, and then I want to say he committed right after, or it was either right before or right after the game against Georgia. So he was obviously impressed with what Michigan did on the field this season, and having been there to campus, he'd already had that experience. So worked out. But kid, they're going to have to continue to kind of recruit until he actually signs on the dotted line, for sure.
Now, the next kid I wanted to talk about is a little closer to home. He's from the Midwest. Brooks Barr. He's a 3-star D lineman. He's from Loyola Academy in Wilmette, Illinois. Talk about him, Steve.
Big kid. Going to be probably kind of reminds me of has a little Matt Godin, Chris Wormley style body to me. Incredibly long wingspan. Another one, though, this is a guy that Mike Elston comes over from Notre Dame. This is one that Elston offered very, very quickly. So I think there was something there for him specifically. Like Barr, probably not part of the class if Sean Nua is still the defensive line coach, just based on what seemed like personal preference. Because like I said, Elston was recruiting him at Notre Dame, comes over to Michigan, offers him pretty quickly. Michigan, they love those versatile pieces up front. They like the guys they can move in, between 3-tech, 5-tech type deal. Mm-hmm. I think he fits. He's definitely more of an interior guy, but again, I think that wingspan, if he shows the athleticism, could be a guy in certain packages they put on the outside. So nice pickup. Defensive line's always a spot you want to add like versatile regional guys too are always really successful. I want to say Barr had like Iowa and Wisconsin, and so those are the kind of schools you'd like to see a regional kid up front have offers from. So nice pickup. Not a guy I think that Michigan fans are ever going to have to really be concerned about as far as his commitment goes. He seems pretty solid.
Well, the next kid is running back Cole Cabana, who in Southeast Michigan we hear a lot about. He's a 4-star, 5'11", 170, but everything I hear about him is that he has got some wheels, Steve.
Yeah, he's super fast. I believe he's one of the fastest backs in the country for sure. He's also moved up the rankings pretty consistently the last 2 months or so. Biggest thing with Cole, talk about versatility with Barr. I mean, at the back spot, I think Cabana is among the most versatile guys in the country as well. I think so. Michigan only signed one running back last cycle with C.J. Stokes. I look at Cabana as really almost like an offensive athlete because he's got a lot of ability as a receiver. And I don't know if you've seen the NFL, I think he was just in the news, Deebo Samuel. San Francisco's used him as, like they call it, that wide back spot where they'll split him out wide and they'll run the ball with him. I think Michigan might try to do that with A.J. Henning this year too. I think that's really where they kind of view Cabana as a guy who maybe more, we're Henning more wide receiver than back, Cabana more back than wide receiver, but can do both can perform at a high level in both roles. So I think he's a really exciting piece to Michigan's puzzle because you can't teach speed and you can't teach a guy that can do both of those, like both receiving and running the ball at a high level. So, he's one more than most guys in the class, even though he's already a 4-star. Kind of interested to see where his ranking and rating goes from here, because I think if he gets in front of some more eyes and goes up against some more national guys at some of these camps and stuff, I think is a guy that could keep moving up.
Well, another local kid that we already have a commit from is out of West Bloomfield. Small guy, 5'9", 178. He's a 3-star receiver. Not sure how to pronounce his first name, Steve. I think it's Samaj Morgan. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. No, so Samaj, Michigan's first commitment in the class, I want to say. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's quite KJ Hamler's a name that's been thrown around with him, like sort of one of the smaller but like really explosive and dynamic, receiving types. I always thought KJ Hamler was on a different level than any of those guys that have been described like that. And but Morgan is in that mold. Watched him at Ferris State last summer. Very impressive player. Was a guy that, even though he's only a 3-star, to me was like a no doubt pursuit for Michigan, because I think they took a couple bigger receivers last cycle. I think they want a couple slot types in 23. To just go into Ron Bellamy's backyard and take his best receiver out of there, and a guy that had other really nice offers is a big win. So again, another kid, no wavering on his commitment. I would expect him to probably sign and enroll early with Michigan as long as he's got the academic side of things wrapped up. So yeah, nice player. Another one, maybe a little underrated. I think we have him at like an 87 or 88. I think he's a guy, could be an 89 or 90 with a good offseason and a strong senior season.
Well, as you mentioned, we only picked up one running back commit last year from C.J. Stokes. Cole Cabana has committed, which we talked about just a moment ago. But we have another running back, and I think he is a 3-star, Benjamin Hall from Kennesaw, Georgia. He's a big kid, 225 pounds. What do you like about him, Steve?
I think they're trying to kind of find he's different than Hassan Haskins, but somebody that would feel like sort of, I think Haskins turned into way more than what people ever thought he was going to be. But that, his original role, and we've seen all the stats about how effective he is in short yardage situations. I think that Hall is somebody that they can do that guy they look at, they can do that consistently with, a guy that, so the thing with running back recruiting that's been very interesting is Mike Hart does not seem to throw out a ton of offers. A lot of the highly rated backs in this class do not have Michigan scholarship offers. He seems very deliberate in what direction he goes. So Hall was one of the first 23s that he offered, I believe, in the winter evaluation. And looking back, I think it's pretty clear Michigan probably vaulted right into the lead and sort of ran away with that one. So big body guy, especially short yardage back. So he might be one. Senior season will be really interesting to watch, because I want to say he played behind another big time recruit. He played at North Cobb in Kennesaw, Georgia's like one of the most loaded programs Georgia's loaded as it is, but that program is super loaded. So he'll get a much bigger opportunity to showcase his skills this season. So I think if there's maybe a couple guys in the class whose film I'd be really interested to see senior season, it's definitely Hall would probably be near at the top of the list. So would add Miami just offered him yesterday. I want to say, he just committed. If he gets some more big offers, maybe he is a kid that'll take some visits, but I just say that Miami offered him just for the fact that, that's nice to see another pretty big school. Cause that's one thing that was kind of commented on about his commitment was, Michigan was probably his best offer by a decent amount, so I think some fans were a little underwhelmed necessarily, but you see a school like Miami where, South Florida alone is loaded with good running back prospects. Seeing Miami offer it says a lot about maybe this kid's abilities.
Well, last of the commits right now, the hard commits that we have in this class of 2023, Steve, is another local kid, Adam Samaha from Ann Arbor, Huron. Of course, kickers don't get ratings, so how good is he?
Michigan thinks he's the best. Nice to have a great kicking prospect right in your backyard, right? I mean, well, it is. It's like these guys, like you said, Mike, they never get ranked, so they never get any love, where it's like, he'd probably be the number one ranked player at his position, and you can't understate. We've seen with Jake Moody winning the Groza Award or whatever. You can't understate how great or how valuable a great kicker is. So these guys, because I'm always partial to special teams. I love talking about special teams. I like reading the statistics on special teams. He's a really big commitment. Like it's nice to just be able to kind of get a guy that's right down the road who's as elite as he is. So I think there's some connections to Michigan. I mean, it was pretty much a slam dunk when they offered. But I'm huge. I've actually tried to talk to 24. Like, we need to revamp like the specialty. We need to figure out a way to like accurately portray how valuable a special teams commitment is, because like you said, like a lot of these guys aren't even ranked or rated. If they are, it's like low 3-star. It's like, I just don't really think it's an accurate portrayal, because like I said, we've seen how valuable these guys can be and how much special teams can change the game on a week-to-week basis. So, Adam always just kind of gets tossed in and they got a kicker commit this year. But I think these are always important commitments for sure. You just can't understate how great having a great kicker on your roster can really do for you field position-wise, and scoring points in the field goal game.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Steve. I think most people do. Well, those are the hard commits that we have. So that means we have a lot of offers out there. So let's talk about some of the kids that that are warm on Michigan or leaning our way. The one that I get the most questions about, Steve, is 5-star Dante Moore, quarterback from Martin Luther King, 6'2", 195. It sounds like he had a recent visit to Notre Dame, and they made quite an impression on him too, Steve.
Yeah, so Dante, I'd plug our site here real quick, because my colleague Sam Webb just did a great long-form, in-depth video interview with Dante. He was at Detroit King earlier this week or late last week. If anybody wants like the deep insight on what's going on there, I would definitely check all that out. We've talked about Dante probably more than anybody. You're right. I mean, naturally though, Mike, right? I mean, he's the highest ranked quarterback out of the state in years, might be the best quarterback prospect in the state since, I thought, Drew Henson, probably, right? I mean, maybe Devin Gardner when he was in high school, but I would say, I'd probably take Dante Moore. But yeah, Michigan battling interesting group of schools. Notre Dame, obviously, Oregon, LSU, Miami. I mean, if he was releasing a top 5 right now, I think that would be his top 5. It'd be Michigan, Notre Dame, Miami, LSU, and Oregon. I still think this will be Michigan or Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has done a really, really good job here. I would argue right now, even though the two schools don't play again until 33 or 34, right? It's like 10 more years or something. Mm-hmm. I think the rivalry between these two schools is as heated as ever because of the recruiting trail. They're recruiting so many of the same guys right now, more than I've ever remember. And Dante's like at the top of that list. So going to be a really, really heated battle over the summer. He's set officials to LSU, Oregon, the other three, the LSU, Oregon, Miami, I believe. To me, that says he wants to get it over before his senior season. Maybe he doesn't, but usually a guy takes their summer officials. They're not going to drag it out too long. So will be interesting to see if and when he sets a Michigan and or Notre Dame official, right now, I think it's probably those two schools. But I'd give the Irish the edge as of right now. I mean, I don't think there are any crystal balls in for Dante yet. If I was pegging a leaderboard, it would probably be Notre Dame 1, Michigan 2. And, Notre Dame's just done a really good job recruiting a lot of guys right now, and they've become a bigger problem than they ever have for Michigan.
Well, of course, we will watch that as we get into the summer and closer to the season. That would be huge if Michigan can get a commit from him, of course. So let's talk about some of these other kids that we are in on, Steve. Another running back. We've already got 2 hard commits from running backs, as we discussed, but there's Jaden Lemar, I believe. 4-star out of Lake Stevens, Washington. Is it possible where we would take 3 backs?
I think they'd aim to take 3, Mike. Honestly, I think Blake Corum probably would go if he has a good year if he has a good year in 2022. They've been aiming for 5 scholarship backs. That's why they tried to take a second Stokes last cycle. It didn't happen. They tried to go after Diamante Trianum out of Arizona State in the transfer portal. He committed to Ohio State as a linebacker instead. So they've been trying. And like I said, with Cabana kind of being a back receiver sort of deal and Hall being like more of a big body, I think they still sort of want that, what you'd consider a bell cow, like a number 1 back type guy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like a guy that doesn't fit into like a super defined role, but could be a guy that could get 20, 25 carries a game if you needed him to. So, yeah, I think they definitely want a third back. Lemar is definitely one of the guys that has been in the conversation there. But here we are talking about a kid from Washington, and I would say Michigan's biggest competition is probably Notre Dame. He's been to South Bend a couple times. He's been to Ann Arbor at least once. But yeah, I would say Notre Dame, again, probably the biggest competition, and it would not surprise me if Notre Dame led there right now, honestly. So, they want 3 backs. It's going to be hard to convince a third guy at the position to commit, in my opinion, right? I mean, it's just depth chart. You're already looking, it's like, you want to commit to a school that doesn't have any running back commitments, or do you want to commit to one that says that has 2 running back commitments? So that'll be interesting to see how they kind of, go about that dynamic. But yeah, Notre Dame probably the leader for Lemar if I had to guess right now.
Well, next up, I'd like to talk about a couple of 5-star wideouts that are leaning towards us. From what I understand, Jalen Brown from Miami, Shelton Sampson Jr. from Baton Rouge, both of those places, especially Louisiana, not friendly to Michigan.
No, I mean, remember Louisiana used to be friendly to Michigan back in the day. Chris Howard, Leroy Horde, Anthony Thomas, right. James Hall, right? I mean, it used to be, but I think LSU was a pretty mediocre program back then. Sampson first. Michigan just made the top 6. I was told, I can't remember the name of his school, but he goes to Baton Rouge. He lives in Baton Rouge. There are some schools in Louisiana, not many, but there are some that, kids feel free to go other places. His school apparently is not one of them. I would be very surprised if Michigan beat LSU out in this one. They really, with his top group, I know there's Texas A&M was in there. I think Oregon. Michigan really kind of felt like the outlier in that group, but he is a guy they do think they can get up to campus at some point. And, Ron Bellamy, a Louisiana native, got to think he's the 100% the reason Michigan's in this one. So a guy I think worth trying for, because I think he's big time, but definitely not a guy I'd get my hopes up with. So, and then was Jalen Brown's the other guy you mentioned. Josh Gaddis leaving for Miami. That's one recruitment where that didn't help Michigan. Brown, obviously from Miami, Gulliver Prep, has probably been their top overall target at receiver since the 23. I mean, basically since they could start recruiting that cycle. He's a guy though he's already been up a couple times. He's expected to come back up at least one more time, if not 2 more times. So not a guy I'd write off for sure. I think Michigan's still in it, but Miami tougher than ever now with Gaddis already there. And again, just the proximity to Miami, they have that. Chris Stoll's come in with a lot of hype and everything. So Miami was already becoming more of a factor before Gaddis came. But with Gaddis, his primary recruiter at Michigan, now the OC at Miami, I think that one's going to be a little tougher. But that one's not insurmountable in my opinion. That one's one, if Michigan does a good job this offseason, maybe has another good season, that's a guy I could potentially see still being a part of the class.
Well, those are the 2 big receivers we hear about the most. There's also a tight end that we do hear about. He's a 4-star. Riley Williams from Central Catholic, but another kid who's out in Oregon.
Yeah, these kids are like, Michigan's like going stretching the country out here this cycle. They really are. It does feel like there's more guys. I mean, they're recruiting. I don't know if we'll talk about them, but they're recruiting another kid out of Idaho. Again, they got Colson Loveland last cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But Riley Williams, another one Michigan made the top group. Probably, in my opinion, is the best tight end that they've recruited this cycle. Grew up an Oregon fan, lives in Oregon. I think that'll be another one that's a tough pull, but he's another one, though, that I think will get to campus at some point, right? So that's one where you wait. That's those guys like that. You talk about Shelton Sampson, you talk about Riley Williams. Those are guys that you wait for them to get up there and then see how it goes after the visit goes. That's really the only way you can gauge if Michigan's going to have a real shot or not is can they get him there? And when they do, how does it go? The hope is what we've always been told is an out of region kid. You almost have to get him up twice if you want a real shot, right? So get him up, try to get him up for an unofficial at some point, and then secure one of the 5 officials, and then you'll have an actual chance. So that's why I look at it I always look at the barbecue, some of the camp days in June. Can Michigan get some of these guys up for an unofficial and then maybe go for an official during the season? I would put Williams and Sampson in that camp for sure. But yeah, Williams would be a huge. Michigan's always done so well at tight end, but I think they want to take 2. Tight end actually, real quick. I don't think people realize we had a lot of crap on the board for talking about tight end being actual need. They could lose 4 scholarship guys this offseason. They would, with Eric All, Schoonmaker, Honigford, and Selzer, right? And all 4 of those guys dressed for every game last year. Mm-hmm. Yes, they've recruited the position well, but we know Michigan likes to use the tight ends a lot. So I think tight end's quietly a spot where Michigan wants to get a second guy for sure, and then see where it goes from there.
Let's move into the interior offensive line and talk about a couple of guys who are leaning Michigan's way. Amir Herring, 6'6", 280, another kid out of the West Bloomfield program, Steve.
Herring's, I would call he's another one, a guy that I'm really interested to see where his ranking goes because he has destroyed it at the camps this offseason already. A guy to me should be a shoo-in for Michigan. There's questions about how high he is on Michigan's board, I think. I don't know how true that stuff is. I know the crystal balls are leaning Michigan because that was early in the process. I think he was very close to verbally committing to Michigan. He's another guy, just released a top 8. Obviously, Michigan's in it. Sharon Moore's recruiting him. If Michigan pushes hard here, I think they'll end up getting him. I think he projects as a potential center. So I think if you're Michigan, I don't know what you're waiting for. This kind of reminds me of the Raheem Anderson recruitment a couple of cycles ago where it felt like Michigan wasn't all the way in for a while. And then I think they woke up and realized, this is definitely a kid we should take. That's where I kind of think things are at with Amir Herring. To me, he's just, like I said, should be a shoo-in. I think he's a really good prospect, and I'm kind of wondering what the holdup is there. So not sure who the other competitors would be. I know, I think a very random at top 8. I think Michigan State was in there, Mizzou. There was a couple other schools in there, so Penn State maybe. But yeah, I think he's a guy that if Michigan really wants him, I think they can go get him.
Well, the other interior guy that I read about the most is Sam Pendleton. He's a 4-star, 6'5", 305, so he's a huge kid. But again, he is out of North Carolina.
So that's been the Pendleton recruitment's been an interesting one. Michigan offered him very early. They got him on campus right away. They led. Well, then Clemson offered, and I think Clemson led. And they visited Michigan again, and I think Michigan led. And then Notre Dame offered, and he went and visited Notre Dame. And here we are again in a situation I think Notre Dame is probably the leader. The difference is he's actually set a commitment date now. So I think Michigan has a real uphill battle with that one because I don't think he's going to be coming back to Ann Arbor before he makes his decision. So if I had to choose right now, I think he chooses Notre Dame. I think, sorry to everybody out there, probably sick of me already talking about Notre Dame, but I do think that the Irish are probably going to secure his verbal. Only thing would be if he does end up deciding to take, some more visits or whatever, that would be the hope for other programs. Cause I could see a situation where he's not a kid, he verbals elsewhere, but maybe I could see Michigan maybe continuing that pursuit, right? That would be one I maybe would still keep an eye on just to see. But otherwise, yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't Notre Dame as of now, which, yeah, I mean, I think he did work his way into low 4-star territory, but he's definitely a guy Michigan thinks really highly of him. That would be I would consider that a definite loss for them because I think for a certain period of time they thought they were in good shape with him.
Herring and Pendleton are the two interior offensive linemen I've heard the most about, but who else is on Michigan's radar for the interior?
A couple names. Roderick Kearney is one out of South Florida. Is a kid that Michigan, I think, has done a pretty good job with early. I think they'll get him up to campus at some point. He's kind of your classic 4-star Florida kid, though. He's got Florida State, Florida, Miami. He's got a lot of those schools down there. So those are never the easiest ones. Another guy to watch out for is a kid named Kobe Keenum out of Alabama. He came up for the spring game and he's a guy, I think, whereas Herring, I think, could project a center or guard. I actually think Keenum is like straight up center. If Michigan becomes a major factor in that one, does that impact? Because they were very impressed with Keenum when he came up to campus. So I feel like he's a guy they're going to keep recruiting. So, and Alabama and Auburn haven't offered yet. So, that helps for a kid out of Alabama. But either way, is a guy that Michigan, I think, sometimes when they get a kid up to campus, you want to see them physically, get to know them. Then you kind of learn if you're going to actually really go strong after them. Keenum was very impressive, apparently. So it's a guy I think they'll go after. But those are the two other names off the top of my head that really kind of stick out as far as interior guys.
Well, as far as the offensive tackles go, we're in on some really highly rated guys and some big dudes too. 5-star Caden Proctor from Des Moines. He is 6'7", 330 pounds.
Yeah, and he doesn't move like he's 335 pounds either, though, right? Proctor's really, really elite. And as you'd expect, tough pull. Iowa, obviously, like you said, he's a Des Moines native. I think Iowa's right there. I think Penn State's done a pretty good job there. Michigan, though, ironically, Michigan was his first scholarship offer. He visited campus. That's how long these guys get recruited. It was like 2 years ago, I think he visited Michigan, right? And they were the first scholarship offer for him. So they have that in their back pocket. And, Michigan in a position right now, coming off the Joe Moore Award, probably 4, if not all 5 of the guys that will start for them this year will get drafted in some capacity. Mm-hmm. If they have a lot going for them up front, it's always tough sledding with any elite top 10 overall 5-star kind of guy. So, the kind of guy Michigan should be taking a swing for the fences with, but not a guy I would be like putting any stock into or getting my hopes way up for sure.
Well, another kid we're in on he's huge too, is Caden Green. He's a 4-star, 6'5", 310, and he's from Lee Summit, Missouri, Steve.
Yeah, so Missouri has become a pretty important recruiting area for Michigan. They had guys in Kansas City and St. Louis for multiple days this week, actually. So that's a geographical area where fans may want to pay a little bit more attention to. But as far as Caden Green goes, feels like Michigan and Oklahoma, not to continue the pessimism, but he has a lot of connections to Oklahoma. But this is one where Michigan's done a really, really, really good job. And I would not count them out on this one for sure. As long as he comes back up to visit, which he said is going to, he's supposed to take an official. So as long as they get him back up there for that official, I think they're still going to get their shot. But I do think Oklahoma, there's proximity, and I want to say one of his parents may have went there or something like that. But either way, there are some connections to the Sooners program. But it's a 2-team race there between Michigan and Oklahoma for sure.
Well, another big guy we're in on is Charles Jagusa, 6'6", 308 pounds. He's a 4-star, or what do you like about him, Steve?
So he's one of my favorite players, in the class. I think he's got massive potential. One of those guys that whatever his listed weight is, he doesn't look like he comes close to even weighing that much. One of those guys.
Yeah.
So Michigan, Notre Dame, 2-team race again. This is one, though, I think, Michigan just had him up. This one I think is pretty close. This is right up there with the Dante Moore stuff, I think. I think Michigan, Notre Dame are far and away the top 2 teams. I do think he's considering Arkansas also, but Michigan and Notre Dame, have done the best job here. He's, Green and Jagusa are probably their top 2 tackle targets, honestly, as far as gettable guys. And so they're in a couple of 2-team races with each of those guys. So yeah, Jagusa, Michigan, Notre Dame, and as a kid that, like I said, I think his potential's through the roof. He was a guy when they first offered. I think he was either a 3-star or unranked. Was a guy that right away was like, no, this guy's not a 3-star. This guy's legit, and I think he's in the top 100. So just visited Michigan and Notre Dame. Came up to Michigan last. I think Michigan did a really good job with him, and that'll be one to watch for sure. That's one Michigan I think can win.
Well, another kid we're in on is closer to home, Trevor Locke, 3-star. He's from Indy, 6'6", 285, said to be leaning Michigan's way.
Locke is definitely a guy that Michigan fans should be familiar with too. I don't know if he's like quite plan A, right? It depends on how many guys they're going to take up front. But I do think he's a guy. This is another one that I could see in the class. Kind of one of the quieter targets for Michigan this cycle. Maybe hasn't gotten as much pub as like the guys we've already talked about. But again, quietly has 20? He's got a decent amount. He's got a lot of offers from some solid schools. More of your closer to being a refined product up front, than a guy like Jagusa, let's say, but doesn't take away from his ability. So definitely a guy to watch. One where I think Michigan's in solid shape, but I don't think he's in any hurry right now either. So could be a guy that adds more offers and gets more options as the process goes. But I'd probably peg him as, if he was doing his 5 official visits, I bet Michigan would be one of them right now.
Well, over on the defensive line, on the defensive side of the ball, let's start and talk about a few of these kids. We're in on some good ones there too. Jason Moore, a 4-star from a football powerhouse, DeMatha Catholic, 6'6", 255 pounds. This kid looks good.
Yeah, he's great, right? Comes from an excellent high school program at DeMatha Catholic. Michigan had a lot of bad luck for the spring game. He was supposed to visit for the spring game, but his brother is actually the Villanova kid that got injured and had to miss the Final Four game or whatever. So his family went to the Final Four game to go support. He went there instead of going to the Michigan spring game because Nova won. So if Michigan had beaten Villanova, let's say, he probably would have been up for the spring game, right? So it's it just always seems to happen to Michigan. But either way, yeah, I mean, Jason Moore, so he was really highly rated when we first came out with our 23s. Then he dropped a little bit. I think he's going to go back up. He's got all of them. He's been to Notre Dame. He's been to Ohio State. He's been to Penn State. He still hasn't been to Michigan yet, but I actually think Michigan they're in a spot. That's one I think they can win also eventually. That's one that they just got to get him up there at campus. Mike Elston had a good relationship with him at Notre Dame. That's one recruitment where Elston's the relationship he had built with Moore at Notre Dame will actually help Michigan's chances here because he really likes Mike Elston a lot. So that's one where I think Elston can be a huge asset. And yeah, I think he's a big timer. He's a guy. That's an interesting size, because I think he's a guy that could play on the edge for sure, but he's also a guy that could move inside a little bit, maybe sort of how they use Hutchinson, Hutchinson would stand up sometimes, then put his hand down. I think that's the way they could really use more.
Well, another big kid on the D-line that's leaning toward us is John Walker, and he's from Kissimmee, Florida. Big guy, 6'3", 310 pounds, but again, he's a Florida kid.
Right, and Walker's one that hasn't been up yet either, but is a guy another one that I think they expect to get up to campus at some point. He's another one, big time, probably a top 100 in my opinion. I don't think he's quite there on our rankings, but is probably maybe the best, not run plug, not your 340 guy, but that best 300, 310 guy that they're recruiting probably. There's another kid named Jordan Hall, I believe, on the interior line is another one that's really, really good that they like. But yeah, Walker, big time national recruit. Not every guy that's being recruited by 50 schools is a 5-star. There's always those, especially in the interior line. We know how important and how hard it is to find an elite interior lineman. And so I think Walker's recruitment has kind of borne that out. But again, Michigan's done a pretty good job there. It's just a matter of getting them up to campus and seeing what they can do when they get them there, right?
Well, we're also in on another 4-star, Devin Houston. He's playing at St. James in Sharpsburg, Maryland. Another pretty good-sized kid, 6'4", 270 pounds, Steve.
Yep, that's actually Caleb Houston's brother.
Right.
On the Michigan team, right? Another one that Elston kind of, I don't want to say brought over, but is a guy that he was interested in at Notre Dame and offered pretty early on at Michigan. Notre Dame again. It really is. And he's visited both programs. You would hope that his brother, having played for Michigan, would help Michigan here. I mean, it's obviously not hurting them. But again, this is one, as things stand right this second, I would say Notre Dame is probably ahead there. But this is another one I think Michigan, because of those connections, and he had a good visit, this one I think Michigan could get back into. We'll have to see. Michigan's actually in on a lot of D linemen. It's going to be interesting to see who they get when. because there are a lot of options, and Houston's right in the mix there.
Well, the only local kid that I see listed consistently as a 4-star, it's Jalen Thompson from Cass Tech. Not an overly big guy, though. Every time I see his height and weight, it's 6'3", 245. Does that sound right?
Yeah, more of your – I'm trying to think like who would be on Michigan's roster right now, compare him to. He's more of an edge for sure, right? I know he's listed at we've changed it to like DL and then edge.
Yeah.
And I think there's like a little bit of overlap there. I would call him more of an edge spot. I think Thompson's leaning Michigan State. I don't think Michigan I don't think he's A1 priority. Like if he didn't go to Cass Tech, I'm not sure how hard Michigan would be pushing there necessarily. I think he's a really good player. That's not to say I think Michigan's correct, right? It's just I'm not convinced Michigan is really making him as much of a priority as, let's say, Michigan State is. I'd be very surprised if Thompson was not at least verbally committed to Michigan State at some point, because he's definitely been a top priority for Mel Tucker's crew for a while now.
Any other defensive linemen that are leaning our way that we haven't discussed so far?
So are we doing edge separately? Because the edge is there's Nicholas Harbor on the edge. Is like he's that kid that's like running like freak track times. Like legitimate Olympic level, like sprinting times at 6'3", 240.
Right.
Just the most insane athlete that we've ever covered since I've been doing this for sure. Harbor, one of Michigan's top 5 overall targets for sure. Samuel Mpemba, edge out of IMG Academy, is another guy, 5-star. Elston's done a good job there. He was up to campus not that long ago. Is another guy for sure I'd be watching. There's a ton of like those tweener, edge DN type guys that they're recruiting right now. Those are the 2 huge ones. There's another kid named Collins Achiampong out of Anaheim who 6'8", 230?
Yeah.
Basketball player by trade. Michigan will be he's releasing a top 6, I think, today. Michigan will be in it for sure. I'd lean USC there, but man, this kid, he's only a 3-star right now. He's another one that's got potential through the roof. You're really starting to see schools just recruit pure athletes at that spot and then just use your coaching ability to turn them into pass rushers. And so Achiampong, not as highly ranked as Harbor because he's not as athletic, but high ceiling type kid at the spot. I mean, those are the 3 that really jump out to me on that edge spot too. So like those are definitely names. But yeah, if you want some entertainment, go watch Nick Harbor's track times. Go watch his track runs on YouTube and stuff. It's crazy. I mean, he's outrunning kids that are half his size. It's insane. Like it's crazy. It looks like a grown man running against kindergartners when he's out there. I've never seen anything like it. So something for listeners to do out there when they get a few free moments.
Well, sticking with the defense, we talked about linebacker earlier in the sense that Raylan Wilson from Florida, Tallahassee, is really the only hard commit. And I know we have a lot of offers out there, Steve, but who are some of the other linebackers that might be leaning Michigan's way?
Yeah, linebacker's been actually really interesting, because they do have an elite guy committed, but there's a lot of guys that they're like in it for, but nobody I would call like a heavy lean or anything. I know Phil Picciotti, 4-star out of Pennsylvania, is a kid they had up to campus about a month or so ago. Really liked his visit. I think Michigan is in the race there. I know they're trying to there's a pair of twins out of Florida, Andrew and what's the other one's name? I always want to say David Harris, but I know it's not David Harris. Andrew Harris and his twin brother. I'm sorry to the twin if he's listening. I'm sure he's not, but 4 stars out of Florida. Michigan's been working. Michael Harris, sorry, that's it. Michigan's really working hard to try to get those guys up to campus. We'll have to see where that goes. They've just put out a couple offers at linebacker too. That was one spot that we were waiting to see how many offers they would put out during this winter or this spring evaluation period, because the board has been kind of mysteriously small. So those are like the only names that really jump to the forefront of my mind right now. It's really, it almost puts a lot of pressure on them to try to hang on to Wilson, honestly, because it's been sort of slim pickings at linebacker so far.
It sure has. As far as cornerbacks go, we have we're in on a really good. I've seen tape on this kid too. 5-star Kermani McLean. He's from Lakeland, Florida. Said to be very interested in Michigan. Who are we battling for him, Steve?
So McLean is like your every team and every program in the country wants type of guy, right? Michigan did make his top group, though. Good test for Steve Clinkscale, who I actually think is one of Michigan's best recruiters. Clinkscale's put into a lot of tough areas to try to recruit kids out of. You're talking about Lakeland, Florida. Yeah. I mean, there's not a program in the country that's not going to get a chance to watch that kid play at some point. And so he's, number one corner in the country. I think that's legit. I think he is the top corner prospect in the country. Just your typical, you name them, Bama, Florida, Florida State, Miami, Georgia, Texas A&M, USC, like all those schools are somewhere involved with him. So kind of, I would treat that a lot like maybe the Caden Proctor one, right? Where it's like, I think Michigan will get an opportunity, but not, you do not invest a lot of feelings in, in him going to Michigan. Cause it's just one of those deals where at the end of the day, the odds are just against, I'd bet the field. If I was any program right now, I'd be betting the field. I just don't think there's a kid that he does not have like a clear favorite and is not going to be one in any hurry. I'd be surprised.
As we mentioned, we don't have a cornerback hard commit yet. Who are some of the other guys, and how many cornerbacks do you think we need to take in this cycle, Steve?
So I think they can be picky at corner finally. It's been a while, but I don't think there's a lot of pressure to take too many guys if they get the right ones, right? Malik, they just made the top group for Malik Muhammad out of Texas. I think that was a little bit of a surprise. There's a kid named Jair Hill out of Illinois, is listed at athlete, but projects the cornerback for Michigan. I really, really like him. I think he's a guy that could end up in the class. I don't know if we have him in an 88 or 89. I think he's a 4-star for sure. That's one where Michigan was one of the first to offer, and they've done a really, really good job there. I'm trying to think of some other guys. Dalen Austin was a guy they were recruiting for a while. I don't know if they made the top group there out of Long Beach Poly. Malik, or what's the kid's name? Beasley out of Washington. There's a kid out of Seattle that they've been recruiting. Caleb Presley, that's the kid's name. Came out from the same program as Josh Connerly, the offensive lineman who was going to commit to Michigan at some point, but signed with Oregon instead. He came out to campus, is another top 150 type kid. Corner, they're recruiting, we talk about guys from all over the country. Mm-hmm. Corner's one spot where they're in a lot of those like national type recruitments. So I think there's because they can swing for the fences right now. I mean, they just signed maybe their best cornerback group that they've ever signed or close to, with the guys that they got. I mean, Will Johnson's already in the 2 deep. They got guys. So I think they can afford to be a little bit more picky and take a swing at a guy like McLean. But again, there's really no crystal balls where Michigan's leading for any corners or anything right now. I think it just really is about same drill as just getting some of these other guys on campus and get, keeping the seat warm for hopefully another big season, and they can get some commitment.
Well, from what I understand, we've offered 29 or 30 safeties in this class so far. No hard commits, Steve. So are we making inroads with any of these 29 or 30 kids that we've offered so far?
I think one newish guy, I mean, not new in that he was offered, but new that we know Michigan really wants, is a kid named Marvin Burks Jr. out of St. Louis, 4-star. Michigan made, I think he released, he did one of those top 15s or something where they only eliminate 3 schools. He did that. Michigan made it, which it was expected, but he's a guy that Michigan is making a big time priority. Is a kid I think Michigan would have a real shot at too. That's why I talk about Missouri, as a spot where Michigan could really do some damage. And then another big time ranked guy. The other one I'd talk about is Derek Williams, but again, Louisiana. He's already been to campus though. So that's, I talk about getting a guy up out of region twice. They've already gotten him up for the unofficial, and it was a very good unofficial. I can't remember. He doesn't go to John Curtis, but it's another one of the powerhouse programs down there in Louisiana. Not a school. I think LSU would probably be the favorite just based on history, but not a slam dunk to go there. So that's one, again, talk about Ron Bellamy. That's one where I think Michigan could maybe make some headway. But those are I would say those are the 2 big names at safety that Michigan is probably going after right now. After that, there's a lot of names, but nobody that is super priority A1 type guy necessarily.
Well, let's talk about the athletes category, which seems to be expanding for teams. And one of the kids that we're after, again, I've seen tape on him, and 3-star Kenyon Sadiq. And we talked at the top of the show about places that we have not recruited very often. Idaho Falls is where Kenyon resides, and again, we really have not spent a lot of time in Idaho, have we?
No. So when Michigan signed Colton Loveland last cycle out of Idaho, it was their first or only the third varsity letter ever from Idaho, and like the other two were from like 1906 and like 1890. I'm serious. It was funny. We actually interviewed him on signing day, and I actually looked it up while we were interviewing him, and I think we had a long snapper walk on from Idaho like in 2013 or 14. But besides that, yeah, nobody. But yeah, Michigan evaluated, like Sadiq was like 3 weeks ago, watched his film, and immediately got on the phone with his coaching staff and offered him. I mean, it was a no doubt offer. He's a guy already bumped up to 4-star status on 247. I think he'll go. He's a riser for sure. He's a 3-star in the composite still, but we have him higher than the composite. He's going to keep going up. I mean, he's legit. Like, I think he ran a 10.8 100 at 6'3", 205. I mean, just some of the times that these kids are putting up it's just insane nowadays. But he is he's another one, sort of like Harbor, in that some schools are recruiting him at receiver, some schools are recruiting him at linebacker, some are even maybe talking to him about that edge spot. Michigan's recruiting him at receiver right now. I think he'd be a better linebacker personally. That's my opinion, but I think he could play either one. But yeah, I mean, he's a kid. Definitely a name to watch though. Oregon is probably the main competitor there, but I think Michigan offering as early as they did is going to be a big asset for them. And having Colton Loveland signed to the program has helped, because Colton Loveland has been helping try to recruit him, and would be really funny if Michigan signed the top player in Idaho for 2 cycles in a row. It'd be kind of a neat, interesting little thing. So Sadiq is absolutely a name to watch.
The other kid under the athlete umbrella that we read about a lot is a kid named Cade Eldridge, 6'4", 235. Now, he's a 3-star, and he's a West Coast kid out of Linden, Washington. Where does Michigan see him fitting in, Steve?
So I think Eldridge is more of a, where Sadiq would be a receiver. I think Eldridge is either a tight end or a linebacker for Michigan. I would say tight end probably. With his size, more of your inline tight end type kid. I think they would like a flex and an inline. They had the Rapplier kid committed out of Massachusetts. He flipped to Penn State. Would be more of your flex style tight end. I think Eldridge is a guy who would project more of that inline guy. So those are the 2 spots I think they're looking at him at. Another one that they got in pretty early with, and I think that'll be an asset for them. He's actually visited campus already, had a really good visit. That's when Michigan offered him. And, getting that personal offer instead of over the phone, I think is always a good thing when you can do it. So, I think that puts Michigan right in it. And, yeah, there's a lot more, like, versatility is just the name of the game now. There's so many guys. There are guys that are listed at regular positions, I think, that you could just move to athlete, actually. That's another – talk about revamping the special teams rankings, trying to figure out a better way to rank the guys that are listed as athletes or position them was something else that I think is necessary, because there's so many – kind of like, in basketball, they talk positionless basketball now. I mean, there's not quite that to that extent, but there is some positionless, at least recruiting wise, positionless stuff that goes on. I mean, it's really about get a kid on campus and see where they fit best. But yeah, Eldridge probably linebacker or tight end for sure.
Well, as of right now, Steve, this class is rated, pretty much by most recruiting services as 16th nationally. You and I talked about this before we started taping today. Do you think Jim's, dabbling with the NFL in January and then losing 2 coordinators in the offseason has been the major factor in slowing down commits this year?
The NFL stuff didn't help. I don't know if there's any way. It's not positive, but I guess at least Harbaugh was honest about that. He's probably, maybe I'd argue, I don't know how many, you could probably count the amount of college coaches on one hand that would be upfront with players and recruits about what was going on.
Yeah.
So there is that, where recruit should be able to, when he says he's committed to Michigan, they should be able to take him at his word. Doesn't always work that way though, especially now that other schools are just going to jump all over the fact that he legitimately was looking at the NFL, right? I mean, coaches in other schools were doing it before he ever actually did it, and it was BS, but they did it, and I'm sure it worked in some cases. Now they're not going to stop. So, it's something that he's going to have to combat for sure. It probably has slowed down things a little bit, which, yeah, when you're coming off a Big Ten championship and a playoff appearance is it's probably a little frustrating, right? I mean, the names that we went over, pretty frustrating to have to listen about Notre Dame and these other programs and stuff. But that's where I think this summer period where they lead up to their big barbecue, I think Michigan can kind of regain some momentum there, get some of these other top guys. Because at the end of the day, it's about development. Michigan is developed. It's about winning and development. Michigan now has proven they can win. They've developed at a high level as anybody, and at a wide variety of positions too at this point. So, if you're an edge prospect, I mean, Michigan should get consideration without even hesitation, right? I mean, they should at least get a look just with all the names and the guys that they've produced in the last 5 or 6 years. So, yeah, I mean, things have been kind of weird. Like I said to you before we got on, it's been a weird spring. But I do think the best of the spring summer is yet to come. I mean, I think you should hope it is, but I really do think it will be. And, the coordinator stuff, I think Gaddis leaving probably didn't help. McDonald, maybe not as much as Gaddis, for sure. I think Gaddis was a little more hands-on on the recruiting trail, for sure. So there is that. But I think the Harbaugh, the NFL stuff probably definitely had more of an impact. And, Michigan had another basically full turnover of their recruiting staff. Mm-hmm. That's one other thing that, every time I talk about, people will ask, what can Michigan do to recruit at the same level as Ohio State? They need some continuity there. It's been almost every year it's a new group, and Ohio State's had Mark Pantoni, since Urban Meyer was there, because he was with Urban at Florida, and so they've had the same guy running the recruiting department for 10 years, and Michigan's on their third straight off season of a new, you had Dudek, and then you had Courtney Morgan, and now you have Karshnia, no continuity there at all. So that, to me, that doesn't help, because, it's having to not reinvent the wheel, but it's everyone approaches everything differently. So it's a new approach. There's new approaches and stuff. So, it's just been a weird off season. I just think at the end of the day, though, winning as many games as they did and producing as many pros should result in they're not going to finish 16th. I'd be shocked, but we'll have to see how high they can get, and the other feather in their cap, the beginning of their schedule is a lot easier this year than it normally is. They're usually going into the heart of their season with one loss, right? And, right. When you start getting into the Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State's, Michigan's usually lost a game. They should enter conference season undefeated this year. And that is always when they'll probably be ranked pretty high in the preseason. You win those first few games. You'll probably bump up. There'll be a couple upsets, I'm sure. You'll bump up a few spots. I mean, you could be talking about a top 5 Michigan team when they go to Kinnick, to take on Iowa for their first really big challenge of the year. So I think that's another area where it's once the wins start coming back in, the good feelings start coming back, I think you'll start to see it resonate a little bit more with some of their top guys.
Well, final question before we let you get away today, Steve. And I get these questions daily, and I have no idea. To me, the NIL is the Wild West right now. What is Michigan doing on that NIL front to be competitive with other Big Ten and national programs, or do we even know? We know
to some extent. You want my honest opinion? I think you get down south. I always called it before NIL. There was the shenanigans. Yeah. I would say now it's NIL probably plus shenanigans still. I don't think the shenanigans have gone away. So there's the NIL factor there. With Michigan, I think Michigan tries to do everything by the book, at least as much as whatever. The Valiant stuff with Jared Wangler. I think what Michigan's aim and goal is to try to give their players the easiest avenue, because Michigan can't have any direct hand in a lot of the stuff. All they can do is expose their athletes to boosters or whatever, right? And so I think that's what Michigan's main aim is to try to increase their athletes' visibility so that they get opportunities. I mean, we have seen guys, I think JJ McCarthy got a truck or whatever, we've seen a couple of guys get the car thing and all that stuff. So as far as it is, the Wild West, it is, and it might be even more wild than it ever has been somehow. So that's I think Michigan is doing a good job there. I just don't know if it's as good as a lot of other programs are, because it's all relative, how loose some of these schools decide to play it, because I feel a lot of schools can kind of play it. And if something happens, they throw their hands up and say, we didn't know, what, there's no rule. Like that type of crap. I mean, it's like we just saw Kansas and North Carolina play for the national championship in basketball, and both schools were just supposedly hit with huge NCAA violations like 3 or 4 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, just so it's Wild West to the extreme. I think Michigan's doing what they can and trying to do it in a way that's not going to get them caught for any type of violations or whatever. So it is, though. It's a Wild West, but it's also there's a lot of mystery behind it too, because nobody knows exactly how the sausage is being made in a lot of situations.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll just have to see how it keeps on developing. But yeah, I don't think many people you talk to have any idea. There's no continuity. Everyone is doing what they want for the most part. So yeah, it is the Wild Wild West. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that plenty in the coming months and years. But today, our guest, of course, has been Steve Lorenz from 247 Sports, and we have covered a lot of ground, Steve. And it's going to be busy right up until commitment date. So we're going to get you back for certain soon to see what's happening with the summer recruiting. So thank you for being so generous with your time, and we look forward to that next visit, Steve.
No problem, Mike.
On Quick Hits today, thanks again to Steve Lorenz from 247 Sports for joining us. As most of you know, we spend plenty of time covering recruiting during the busy summer months, so Steve will be back with us very soon. We had a long interview today, so we will cut it short. Thanks for joining me, and don't forget to tell your Michigan friends and family about the show. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go Blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!